So I'm Dave Haas. I'm with American Structurepoint, as Dan said. We've been just really our pleasure to work on this project for the board here. I've been working for 20 years in stormwater, so really excited to present this to you. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much. Rachel and Anna will take it from here, though.
Yeah. So just like brief introduction, my name's Anna Gridley. I've been working for American Structure Point for 6 years, and I'm a project engineer.
And I'm Rachel Sparks. I'm a project manager with Structurepoint. Been in the industry about 10 years and with Structurepoint for 4 years.
So we're gonna just jump into this. It's a really brief, high-level overview of kind of the process we went through, and then some of the findings that we feel were more important to highlight to this group. So the purpose, obviously, of this plan was to guide the future watershed and floodplain management for the area and build upon the previous plans that were completed in 2013 and 2021. We wanted to go ahead and reassess the prior plans and the projects that were mentioned in those, but then also identify new opportunities that have presented themselves since those times. And then, of course, the whole point of this is to ensure the ongoing compliance with Army Corps for the federal flood control system. So stakeholder engagement, as Dan said, we reached out to all of the 19 stakeholders, including 15 municipalities, and then Lake County Surveyor's Office, Highway Department, Parks Department, and then NDOT as well. And the engagement methods that we used were standardized questionnaires, which we developed and sent out to each one of the stakeholders. And then we also did one-on-one interviews to elaborate on some of those questionnaire answers. Some of our methods, so this is kind of the process we worked through. We reviewed the existing plans to familiarize ourselves with what was out there and the different stakeholders. We developed those questionnaires, and then we asked those stakeholders when meetings would be when would be a good time for those meetings, and then we met with them to discuss those questionnaires. And then from there, we took all the information we gathered, we did some project mapping, and then categorized the projects. Then we prioritized based on what was presented by stakeholders as their priorities, and then we came up with cost estimates for each. And then we also identified some commonalities that were presented by multiple stakeholders as an overall interest that the board could potentially consider. This is just an example of the questionnaire. So in section 1 is where we listed all the projects from previous plans, and then they were able to provide an update on where those were, and specific dates and costs that may have been left out. And then in section 2, it was an opportunity for them, the stakeholders, to list projects that were not mentioned in the previous plans but were completed between 2021 and this current update that we were working on. In section 3, they were able to list the new projects. So this was an opportunity to just get it on paper. Here's what our proposed future projects are, and then we use this section to really dive in our meetings with the stakeholders. And then in section 4, we just listed some miscellaneous items that would help us kind of walk through and understand how each stakeholder and municipality functions. And then also, this was the opportunity for them to list the critical areas or locations that they wanted us to make sure that we included in this plan. So after the questionnaires were completed and then the meetings were completed, we were able to identify over 200 individual projects, which was amazing. This picture on the left is the recently completed Sowerman Woods project, and then the photo on the right represents the proposed Wood Street Pump Station Upgrades project. From there, once we had all the projects and understood where they were located, we did some mapping so that way you could understand like where each project was located without, we just wanted to make sure you knew where they were at instead of a map without the project names on it. So we made sure to add the names to each one of the shapes for each stakeholder. And each project was given a category. Those were regional, semi-regional, local, maintenance, and operational. Regional projects they're proposed to improve the water surface elevations or operational performance of the major waterways in the watershed. And then semi-regional projects, they span multiple jurisdictions and they address flooding and maintainability across a more broad area. And they're not limited to the primary tributaries that the regional category are limited to. The local projects, they deliver benefits within a single jurisdiction, and that includes drainage improvements or localized flood reduction. And then, of course, maintenance is clearing, cleaning, dredging, just improving the overall conditions of existing stormwater infrastructure. And then operational, improving the function, coordination, and understanding of the flood control systems. And then these would support better understanding, forecasting, planning, and response during those storm events. I believe Rachel's going to take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. So after we categorized the projects, we also considered prioritization and cost estimates as well. So not all stakeholders indicated priorities, but for those that did, we took that into consideration and made sure to note that in the report. Cost estimates we developed from several different sources. If there was no prior information about the costs, our team developed those as part of this study. We also had some really good information from the local jurisdictions in terms of costs, whether that be from recent construction bids or engineers' cost estimates during the design phase. So if that was available, we included those. And then also, if there were costs from the previous 2013 and 2021 studies, we took those into consideration and then also updated those numbers to today's dollars. So once we had everything categorized, prioritized, and costs developed, we put that all into a table. So this is just a snapshot from town of Maryville. So they had several different projects throughout the town that they wanted included in the study. So you can see here, this is how we organized it for all of the stakeholders. So project name, classification, watershed, the phase that it's in, whether it's still a concept, whether it's study, design, or going to construction. And then also the cost estimates and then notes about how those were developed. Following the tables in each section, we also have descriptions that just cover more details about the projects if you're interested in learning more about the scope of the project or exactly what it entails. So this is just also an example from the corresponding Maryville table that for these couple of projects here. Like Anna mentioned earlier, we identified a few commonalities across basically all of the jurisdictions we talked to. These are our top three that we identified after going through all of the interviews. The first was the request for rental or semi-frequent access to stormwater maintenance equipment, such as a Marshmaster for removal of Phragmites, logjam removals, other types of maintenance that doesn't always happen very frequently, but when it does, it's very much needed. So a lot of communities felt that they do this type of maintenance annually or biannually, and purchasing a piece of this equipment, since it's so specialized, doesn't really make sense from a cost perspective. But they were all very interested in some sort of cost share program or rental program to access this equipment annually or every so often when they need it. Second was assistance from the Commission with land acquisition. So there are several reasons for needing to acquire land, whether that be from flood-prone areas to provide additional storage or access to ponds for maintenance. Communities just felt that they don't always have the funds to acquire these parcels, but once they are acquired, they would be able to maintain them. And that kind of leads into our third item here, the HOA pond maintenance and management assistance. So almost every community also reported that the long-term maintenance of ponds throughout their community is an issue. And often it's because HOAs either don't have the funds, don't keep up with the maintenance themselves, become defunct over time and nobody's managing it. A lot of different reasons. So those responsibilities end up falling to the local jurisdiction, and they just need assistance with either acquiring those ponds, since they're often located on private properties, or funds to assist with the maintenance to improve water quality and keep the ponds functioning as they're intended. We also wanted to highlight a couple of priority projects that the commission Dan stated, that are priorities for the commission over the several coming years. One being the Little Calumet River conveyance improvements from Hart Ditch to Kennedy Avenue, which would reduce the sediment along this entire stretch of the river. The Kennedy Avenue Bridge reconstruction, which sounds like everyone's pretty familiar with that project. And then Old Ridge Road over Deep River bridge reconstruction. The Ridge Road itself is not in poor condition structurally, but it is undersized. So adding additional waterway area to that bridge and reconstructing it would improve the hydraulics throughout the corridor. Last, we have several regional and high impact projects that we identified throughout the study. So these were our top 7 that we identified that had several different stakeholders involved and had regional benefits that we just wanted to make sure were noted. There were projects along Hart Ditch that Lake County Surveyor's Office and Town of Dyer are pursuing that have a regional impact. The Gary Marshalltown Marsh and the Hatcher Park Complex, which involves Lake County Collaborative, City of Gary, and the Little Cal Commission. Cherville Ditch and Dyer Ditch Teeble Ponds restoration. This includes Lake County Surveyor's Office, Town of Dyer, and Town of Cherville. Also, unregulated Deep River clearing and logjam removal along a long stretch of the Deep River area. This would involve Surveyor's Office, Hobart, Maryville, Lake County Parks, and the commission itself. Old Ridge Road over Deep River, as we already mentioned, since it's in the city of Hobart and it's a Lake County highway bridge, that would also involve those 2 stakeholders. And then Deep River and Little Calumet confluence storage improvements. This is an area of flood-prone area near the 8094-65 intersection with so NDOT, Gary, and the Little Cal Commission all showed interest in providing additional flood storage in this area. And then lastly, the Gary Regional Storage Project. This it would mostly be spearheaded by Town of Maryville, but since it also involves land within the city limits of Gary and also has some interest from Lake County Parks, that's also those 3 jurisdictions would be involved. Lastly, we have some recommended next steps from the results of the study. We'd recommend that the commission consider purchasing a Marshmaster or similar maintenance equipment to start this co-op or cost-sharing program for communities to access on that annual or biannual basis to complete that maintenance. We'd also encourage municipalities to submit proposals that are aligned with this comprehensive plan. As Anna mentioned, we have over 200 projects that we included in this study, and it sounds like we're going to hear a few of those tonight. And then lastly, we would suggest that the commission revisit this effort again in 5 to 10 years to see what's changed and if any updates need to be made. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
All right, gentlemen, any questions for these folks? I'll start. You had each community had a table, all right, as far as the projects that they were interested in. Are those prioritized by the town, by your ID, by what you're recommending, or how are those shown on the table?
So the numbering is not in priority order. We just put the ones in bold that are prioritized, indicated by the town.
Okay, and then you said there was a list that you have of projects that you thought as a comprehensive were of significance.
Yes, that's in the last section of the report. It has its own section with all.
Are there
that
dollar
covers
amounts
all the
associated with
details.
those, or are those back in the tables?
Those are back in the tables, but we can provide that additionally in that section if that would be helpful.
All about the money. Thank you.
I have a few, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yeah, just off the top, what was the response rate from the stakeholders? You said there was 19. Did they all respond, or?
All but 2.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
everyone responded except Cedar Lake and New Chicago.
Okay, really small ones. Cedars not. And then of the 200 projects identified, I have like 4 questions. Of the 200 projects identified, how many of those were carryovers from 2013, 21, and 21 that weren't completed yet, out of curiosity? You're on mute, Rachel.
Anna, do you have a sense for that? We can get that
So that
information to
wasn't
you.
something that we tracked. We tracked it via those questionnaires, but that's certainly something that we could go back and, like we said before, we can like add that in or at least report
Okay.
back on
Yeah,
how it
maybe just a report
compares.
back. We don't, yeah, I would appreciate that. And then Anna, I just want to make sure I understood when you were defining regional versus semi-regional. I think I got it from Rachel, but I thought you said something about semi-regional having multiple jurisdictions, and then it sounded like you said regional had some like limitations. Maybe I misunderstood it.
The regional pertains to like the major waterways, and it's across different jurisdictions as well. But semi-regional, it doesn't just pertain to those primary tributaries. It's more focused on smaller.
Regional is bigger than semi-regional?
Regional is, yes.
Okay, that's what, yeah, when you
Yeah.
said not limited to the tributaries, that threw me a little bit. Okay. And then last one is a bit of a wild card, I guess. Um, on slide 15, you talked about the three commonalities, okay, equipment and, HOAs and buying land. Okay. And then you kind of rounded it out on slide 17 with the list of seven. My general question, because we all are from the area, as you know, we know where we live. What's your professional opinion, if you have one and are at liberty to say? Um, and I don't know if these seven projects answer this, but on the overall area topography, and I would call it like super regional solutions, kind of based on those commonalities and things like that. And just hear me out just for 1 minute. The backdrop is we all know we live in a kind of a marshy, swampy area. It's relatively flat. Um, and so the issues that were on slide 15, these are like constant issues that most of us can remember our entire lives. And this commission is, generally speaking, kind of forward focused, and we don't want to just keep fixing band-aids. Is there something we could do to eliminate, mitigate like some of these problems long term? Big question there, sorry.
Yeah, I would say as far as the sediment accumulation, I think some of these regional and high impact projects would make a big impact in terms of reducing the sediment load. I know the Heart Ditch projects, like the one that was already completed, that provides, a two-stage ditch function for additional storage and, improved water quality benefits. So I would say just continuing to pursue these large flood storage areas would be helpful. I know Lake County Parks also had a lot to say about just having the storage really benefits the water quality. So I think the more that you do that, the more benefits you're going to see across the watershed.
Are any
Um,
of those are any of those in those seven projects that you listed? Like
yeah,
hydro
absolutely.
storage and okay.
So I can share my screen again here. 1 second.
And I was also curious about the last one. You call it the Gary storage thing, but it was driven by the town of Maryville. If you could just brief that
Yeah.
up.
So I'd say, we talked about Heart Ditch a little bit, and then the Cherville Dyer Ditch, that would also improve, these are all kind of storage and water quality improvement projects. The Gary Regional Storage, so in Maryville, Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm remembering this right. So in Maryville, they have a lot of flooding issues. I think it's near 53rd Avenue. And they've identified an area upstream of that street, but it's actually in Gary that has a lot. There's not a lot there. It's pretty empty. That would serve as a good storage area to hold that water back and then reduce the floodplain limits within
And
the
the
town of
city of Gary
Maryville.
actually expressed interest in that one too.
Um, I think we talked about it. I
Um,
think Jay's on the call.
coordinating stakeholder groups I'm looking at. I assume
Yes.
these were like
So
favorably disposed to the project?
We didn't go as far as reaching out to start coordination on all of these. Some of them are already in
Right.
process. The Gary Regional Storage one was still like in the conceptual phase, from Maryville's perspective. So we recommended that they reach out directly to Gary. But we did
Okay.
meet with Gary as well. I think Jay Anderson is on the
So these
call.
would be the primary stakeholders. It's not that you're saying that these stakeholders have expressed an interest or, favorable disposition to these projects necessarily, right?
Correct, not yet. I think some of them are already in process, but then others are not in
Okay.
design or even in the study phase yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I
It
think
might
that's
highlight
mostly
that.
the stakeholders who would need to coordinate on said project, and then
Correct.
also who could potentially see benefits from these projects is what we included in that last column.
That might be worth a little note in the back of the report to say which ones have already expressed an interest and which ones haven't, just for our awareness, I suppose.
Yeah, we can add that.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
On the maintenance projects, did you look at if they're done, is the impact regional or local?
Anna, do you want to take the maintenance question?
Yeah, so for each individual project, it was assigned one of those categories, and if it was maintenance, then that was identified. Is that what you were asking?
Well, does it affect just the local community or does it affect the whole? That's my
So,
question.
Yeah, so maintenance and local, I think, are interchangeable in the maintenance department just because they're kind of smaller scale, with the exception of these larger scale projects that are categorized as regional, because some maintenance might be included in those regional or semi-regional projects.
Okay.
Did it?
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. On your tables on each of the cities and municipalities, you have 4 categories for cost estimates. You said number one was done or performed by American Structurepoint, the other 3 by local jurisdictions or others. And it looks like the only one that's clearly identifying cost estimates, benchmarking it to this year, is the cost estimate updated from previous watershed plans from $2025. Are the other 3 basically benchmarking it from midpoint of this year, last quarter of this year, projecting forward to next year?
Correct. Yeah, we should have said. So all of the costs are in $2025. It's just that the source of the original numbers vary, whether our team developed those using recent bids or other historical data and updating that to $2025, or for example, I think Winfield had several where the design is ongoing and they had cost estimates directly from their consulting engineer from this year, so we put those in. And then if we didn't have any other cost information, we referred back to the 2013 or 2021 reports if those carried through, and updated that to $2025.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Back at, I think, slide 10, 11, and 12, can you bring those back up? I
Sure.
think that you did a color coding by town/city. And I was wondering. Yeah, that's it. Number 10. Yeah, I was wondering, in addition to the color coding, because when we have our watershed applications, they sort of come in by construction, design/engineering, or maintenance. And maybe if you could code them each, if there's a project by a C, a E, or an M, if you can kind of classify them by that. On your following slide, you got maintenance or operational. And so if you can kind of, and maybe you can include operational as a 4th category even, in addition to construction, engineering, and maintenance. And if there's a way that you can kind of maybe put that letter inside of
Into the mapping.
Yeah, into the
information.
mapping.
Yeah,
And-
that should be, yeah, we can add that.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Levon?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you all. That was outstanding.